Right, I will say hello and welcome back to another episode of the Balance Breakdown. And today, the Avengers reassemble. We have Saskatoon's answer to the Hulk himself, Mr. Ian O'Neill. Ian, how's it going?
It's going good, Harry. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking some fights with you guys.
Fantastic. And we have England's answer to Hawkeye and Agent Romanov. We have the Combat Thoughts gentlemen, Robbie and Lee. How's it going, my boys?
It's good, but I wonder who's Hawkeye and who's Romanov?
I mean, I'm going to leave that up to either yourselves and or the audience to decide. But I mean, I have my own opinion. I just won't diverge.
All right, well, let's move on from that quickly.
Yes. So we'll quickly, as always, go over a couple of bits of news. The first bit of news, there's three that I've got. The first one is Dana White has announced that Colby Covington is next for Kamaru Usman. I will ask two sub-questions. First sub-question, what do we think about that? Initial reactions. Agent Romanov, go.
I'll take that role. First fight was fucking fantastic. I think the second fight will be fucking fantastic. I don't see any reason why it's going to change unless we're going to get a whole Tyron Woodley Wonder Boy situation where they suddenly become afraid of each other. It'll be fucking great, and I'll look forward to it.
All right. Well, Hawkeye?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think it's, for me, the fight that should have happened. It's not the hype fight, it's the right fight. And it really will solidify if Usman is as great as people say he is. If he can improve on the performance than what he got the first time around, he is legit. He has improved exponentially. He is getting up there pound for pound list. I think he's going to be a real tough fucking fight, though.
Okay, so clearly both of you hate Leon Edwards. Ian, the sensible choice, please. Bruce Banner? Talk to me.
Yeah, I think it's the right fight to make. I think it is. I think that there would be a lot more buzz around a fight between those two guys than there would be with a Leon Edwards fight. That being said, if Leon goes in, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later on, if Leon goes in and gets a finish over Nate Diaz, he's definitely going to be next in line for the winner of that fight as well. So well, you would have to think, like, you would really have to think. But we can talk about that later on. And I think with Usman, it's the right fight, him and Covington, to go at it again. And I reckon it'll be that fight, then possibly Edwards if he gets the win. And I think we might see a move up division then from Kamaru Usman, all depending on who's the champion in the middleweight division.
Yeah, so my initial reaction is that it's the wrong fight to make. The reason why I say that is because I want to see the best versus the best, right? And I'm going to steal a Sean Sheehan quote here. I want to see the best versus the best when they're at their best, right? We've seen Colby Covington when he was at his best the first time. Right. I think it's fair to say that Colby came in, smoked everyone other than that very first slip up, and didn't even look like he tried. When we got to the Usman fight, we got the absolutely fantastic fight that you guys have already spoken about. And don't get me wrong, I agree. Both guys will have improved since that fight, and it will be on paper, it's equally as good of a fight. However, he's already lost, right? And what we saw him do is we saw him go back and beat the ghost of Tyron Woodley, who's probably going to lose to Jake Paul next news item. But, right, what we haven't seen is Leon Edwards lose other than to the champion, before the champion was the champion, before either of them were anything. To me, the right fight to make, the best fight to make with the two best fighters at the best time is Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman. Now, I understand the logistics and all of that stuff, but I don't really care about hype fights. What I care about is the best fighting the best, right? That's what I want to see. Now, Colby Covington absolutely has a valid argument for saying that he's the best in that division. But he had a chance to prove that when he turned down the fight against Leon Edwards, right? So to me, the fight was Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman. Now, I'm not going to complain about Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. Sign me all of the way up, right? But I just feel like Colby talks all of this stuff about fighters needing to prove themselves, need to do this, need to do that. Well, going beating a Tyron Woodley that we knew was on the slide, I don't think is the way to prove it to himself. But that's my thoughts. We'll move on to the next news item and we'll roll into it nice and quickly, which is Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. I mean, we kind of have to talk about it because it's Tyron, right, and his links to MMA. I don't give one fuck, but my initial gut feeling does tell me that Jake Paul's probably going to beat him. Anyone have any disagreements in that?
No, I completely agree. I saw them face off. I didn't realize how big Jake Paul is.
Yeah, he's a big cunt.
He's fighting a lot of people who are not his weight class.
Yes.
I think he's moving through the ranks of celebrity fights, each time getting a little bit riskier. I still don't think he's tipped the balance where it's equal. You've got a 4-fight losing streak, trigger shy, older Tyron Woodley, who's going to be 40 when he fights. But he looks dangerous. He's got the highlight reel. He's got the past that they can spin into the media and make hype. I think from a hype production value, I think they've done the right thing. But I think CJ Paul winning.
I've got to be honest. I think this is a massive step up for Jake Paul in terms of
Jesus.
Like in terms of the competition. Yeah, I mean, look, Tyron Wood. Can't believe this. 2 fights ago, you were like, I don't believe Tyron Woodley's over the hill yet.
Yeah, fuck you for that as well. Ludicrous.
Can we forget that?
You said that. Look, you said that about Tyron Woodley's last fight, and then
Correct.
Fine, I know he got beat, but at least he wasn't as gun shy as he has been. He did go more for it in that last fight, and I still reckon he hits like a truck.
But it's the setup of how he's going to do it. He's never been a boxer, and he doesn't box.
Yeah.
He does what is a shade of a power punch in MMA, which we've not seen for a while. Jake Paul, he's a dick, and he's a wanker and all the superlatives you want to call him. But he has been training a while now, and he's more of a boxer than Tyron Woodley is.
Look, we have to look before I let Ian dive in with the sensible approach. He's probably going to say that Tyron's going to wipe him out in 30 seconds. Bearing in mind, he hates Leon Edwards as well. But, my thoughts on this are always that the most technical guy is almost certainly going to win, right? Now, we've got clearly a size advantage, yeah? We look at Jake Paul, as you say, from the weigh-in, right? And it's like me standing next to the dog, right? It's just not the same thing. Now, the other side of that is, as you've rightly pointed out, Lee, Tyron's never been a traditional boxer. Neither has Gilbert Durinho Burns. Let's just point that out, right? So when they get into a firefight, it's like when you play Tekken and you smash the keys and something happens, right? None of that looked like crisp, clinical boxing striking, right? Traditional boxing striking. Now, you're not going to find that in MMA, really. The closest you're going to find is maybe a Cub Swanson in his prime, or maybe a Dustin Poirier when he's able to plant his feet. But, we've got a guy that's massive fighting, as you say, a guy that's 40. Now, don't get me wrong, right? If Tyron does manage to land that overhand right, things are going to get very interesting very, very quickly, because we've not seen Jake Paul take any shots. And if Tyron lands, it will certainly be a shot. However, for Tyron to pick up, we also got to think this is in a ring, not a cage, right? Now, when Tyron employs his game plan A, which is go backwards, right? The ring is way less forgiving than the cages, right? Now, that could work to his advantage, or it could work to his disadvantage. The other big difference, what I mean is why it could work to his advantage, is if he doesn't get pushed into the corner of the ring, he can use the ropes to go further backwards, right? This is fantastic for Tyron Woodley. He can use it as imagine it's an elastic band, and he's going to use that force to spring more into that. Anyway.
That is a stretch.
Well, that's the point of an elastic band, isn't it? A stretch. Yeah, nice, fantastic. Ian, come on, bring this podcast back on, man.
I think Woodley's power and the aspect of that power coming into this fight makes it slightly interesting. I think that Jake Paul will probably beat him too, and probably outbox him, and maybe knock him out, maybe finish him. I'm looking at, I strip down all the bullshit and just look at it from a business point of view. And Jake Paul is taking this fight because he's very confident that he can win this fight. So, you know, and there's money there to be made. The only interesting aspect that I have is that Tyron Woodley does pack a punch. If he does land, it'll be interesting to see how Paul will deal with that. But that's going to be easier said than done. You know, like Paul, he can box, right? What level is that is unknown because he's been fighting nobodies and he's been fighting cans. And now he's fighting a guy who has a big right hand and has potential to cause trouble. But, you know, there's ways that you can box around that. And I would think that fight the likely outcome of that fight would be Jake Paul will probably outbox him for a couple of rounds and finish him late on. And yeah, that's about as much as I have to say about that.
Because I think there's a couple of other things to say. Like the first thing is essentially what we're seeing with Jake Paul is how you would treat an 0-0 pro. However, this 0-0 pro just happens to be really famous, right? Mm-hmm. You first feed him two people that can basically just about walk into the ring and not fall over, right? And then you feed him a guy that's got one really good attribute, and that happens. Maybe it's an overhand right, maybe it's good footwork, maybe it's good head movement, whatever it is.
Wrestling in Askren.
Right. And this is the kind of thing, right? Like we've been saying, like Robbie, you mentioned, his pedigree and whatever. Yeah, but Tyron's pedigree was allow people to think that they can shoot on him, and then he stuffs it, and then they get tired, and then he whacks them, right? Well, that's not going to happen in this fight. Right? And the other thing I want to mention just before we move on is the cardio is so much different for boxing. And we know that the point of Woodley's game is to counterpunch, right? Especially in his more recent years. The biggest thing, and I'm going to use Conor McGregor versus Floyd, right? Look what happened to even McGregor, who was a striker who was able to throw volume over a long period of time. Right? He threw a lot of volume, and then he got tired. Right? Now, we can talk about what else happened and all the other things that Floyd did in that fight to tire kind of fine. But when you've got a guy that packs the amount of muscle Woodley has, and let's be honest, he's not going to be cutting any weight for this, I think the cardio also plays a big factor.
I think Woodley's Woodley's inactivity in some, like you mentioned in his last fight, he was more active than he had been in previous fights. And I think that his reluctancy to engage has something to do with doubts that he has in himself and his gas tank as well. And his chin as well, for sure. And, you know, those little negative thoughts are not going to go away. And it's going to be very interesting to see how he deals with it. But like when we're talking about MMA boxing in comparison to traditional boxing, it's night and day. Both of them are completely different. Like the way you set yourself up for boxing in MMA is completely different to the way you would set yourself up in traditional boxing. And you know, kudos to Paul. He's picking the fights. I would have to say I would not have a full interest in this, but I would definitely have one eye looking at this now. And it's just down to the chance that Woodley might land one big shot. He might not even knock him, but I would like to see how Jake Paul reacts if he does get clipped and he does get hurt, because we've not even come close to even seeing anything like that yet.
Sure. And this will be my last point, I promise, because it seems like we talked about this way more than the actual fights, or something interesting related to MMA. Like, I don't know whether this is just part of the shtick or whether he actually believes this, but the one thing that Jake Paul keeps talking about as soon as he gets on the mic is fighter pay, right? And what's really interesting is all of the fans, the MMA fans that hated him because he was calling out this MMA fight, that MMA fight, he's driven a stake right through the heart of that, and he's won so many fans, and that's really fucking clever, by talking about fighter pay. Like, Woodley is obviously getting millions for this, right? Obviously. Ben Askren got close to millions for this, for his, you know, display, whatever, right?
And he got there. He got to the ring.
Well, that's my point. He managed to walk to the ring, and then the rest is whatever it was.
He had too many of them sodas Ian's got.
Yeah, probably. Probably. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I feel like whether this is part of the shtick or not, he's doing incredible things for these fighters, right? Like, if he can go there and he can sell 500,000 pay-per-views, right? And Tyron Woodley walks away with a couple of mil. Okay, it's probably, Tyron Woodley saying it's the biggest payday of his career, and he was the champion for a good couple of fights. So if that's true, we know that champions generally clear a mil, right? Especially in the higher weights, right? So I would expect that to be serious money. But anyway, I will move on to the final and the most riveting point of news. It seems that Diego Sanchez has released himself from the clutches of one Josh Fabia. I'm not going to talk about this because we will talk about it for ages, but if that's true, I'm just really glad for it. Really, really glad.
I can confirm also though he still has an OnlyFans page that didn't.
No, he tweeted about that saying that was Josh Fabia as well.
Oh really?
He also broke up with Josh Fabia like a teenage girl on Twitter.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Look, I mean, these things happen in MMA. What do you want to say?
That's it.
Anyway,
you know, I'm glad that Diego got rid of him too, because he was just a leech, and we've seen guys like this pop up every now and again in the world of MMA. So good riddance to Josh Fabia. That's what I say. Joshua 100%. Fabia.
I can see Harry desperately trying to move this one on now.
Yes, let's not talk about Josh Fabia anymore. Right, we'll get into the fights and we'll start with the main event. I'll kick us off just because I think this fight is pretty cut and dry, to be honest, and hopefully somebody disagrees with me. We have Israel Adesanya back down at middleweight fighting Marvin Vettori. Vettori's obviously been on a pretty good run recently, picked up a couple of good wins. Israel obviously coming off the loss to Jan Blachowicz. To me, this is probably going to be more one-sided than the first fight. The first fight, obviously, Marvin managed to get a couple of takedowns for a little bit of mat time. Israel eventually got back up and dominated the striking. What we saw in Marvin's last fight, to me, showed all of the weaknesses, but all of the positives to his game. Right, the positives being that he could follow a game plan to an absolute T. Right, if you set that guy a game plan, he's going to go out there and execute it to the best of his ability and not deviate once. That's fantastic. That is a brilliant, brilliant trait of a fighter, right? If you're a coach, it's a good game planner. One of the number one traits that you want is for somebody to actually follow that game plan, right? We know the story of Khabib. He comes in the fourth round and Javier's like, right, we're going to wrestle. He's like, no, coach. I'm going to be like Mike Tyson this round. And he's like, no. Let's, Jesus fucking Christ. There's Edson Barbosa out there. Please wrestle, right? He's like, no, coach. I'm Muhammad Ali. Watch. And he's like, oh, Jesus fucking Christ. So, you know, that I think is a really, really, really good trait for Marvin Vettori. The other trait he has in abundance is he seems to have fixed his cardio issues of his early UFC tenure, right? And I think that's massive and will be massive against Izzy. However, what we also saw was no killer instinct. He bites on feints more than I bite on food, right? And I don't feel like his fight IQ has evolved as much as it should have in the time that he's been at the highest level. Does anyone agree with those opening statements? And then we can get on to Izzy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, I would be leaning heavily towards Izzy in this fight as well. I think it was the perfect fight for him to have coming off that Jan loss in comparison to maybe a matchup against Robert Whittaker. I looked back and just tried to figure out how or if Vettori could do it and what he should do. And basically his game plan, you know, Jan outstruck Izzy in parts of that fight, which I think surprised everybody, including Israel Adesanya. I don't think that Marvin Vettori has those striking skills in his rep. Like, he doesn't have the striking skills that Big Jan has. Like, and I think what he did in round 3 is his best route to victory. But even when he got the takedowns against Izzy was able to get back to his feet. Vettori landed very little damage. Like you said, he bites on those feints. Like, Israel had him stood still for long portions of that fight, and he was just eating up that lead leg. And I think if we want to move on to Izzy, I think that will be Izzy's, what we've seen in that first fight will be exactly what we'll see in this fight. maybe multiplied by 10. You know, I think he's going to come at him harder. He said after the last fight, said after the last fight with Vettori that he underestimated how good Vettori's head movement was. And yeah, he's not going to underestimate it anymore. He's going to study hard, and I think he'll find the answers to get Vettori out of there.
So go on, Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say, there's two things I was going to say, really. One, the fact that he can follow a game plan is all well and good, but the game plan has not really been written on how to beat Izzy. So, like, what I don't know. I'm not a professional coach. I don't game plan very well, but I would imagine they're going to struggle to work out exactly how to play it. So being able to stick to a game plan is all well and good, but
You need the game plan.
you need the game plan.
Sure.
But if you can stick to that game plan and the game plan is not working, you need to have an ability to switch it up. And his game plan was not working in the first fight either.
And that's where the fight IQ comes in, because how does he switch it up?
And
Right. So this was
when you look at the Yan fight, Ian said it a minute ago. Everybody says, "Oh, he got the takedown and won for the takedown," and apparently that's the blueprint to beat Izzy now, and it's not. Yan is woefully underestimated by most people, and he has 3 rounds of pure striking with Izzy, and everybody said, "Oh, it was shit. It looks weird," and he's just good at striking. It just doesn't look good. It's not conventional. Vettori does not have that skill. Vettori has to stand in front of him to be able to get a takedown, which is when Adesanya is going to put the pace on him. He's vicious. When he wants to finish you, he's vicious. And that's where I think he'll get caught. I think he's going to be too headstrong on need the takedown. He's going to get caught rushing in.
So the two things that I have, and I think the thing that really circulates around this fight, right? It's the reason why Izzy has been able to win almost all of his fights in the UFC. And it's the reason why he lost against Jan Blachowicz. And that's rhythm, right? Against Paulo Costa, you saw Izzy dictate the rhythm from second 1 of round 1. And Paulo Costa was never able to break that rhythm. Jan Blachowicz was able to break that rhythm on multiple occasions early. Right. So we talk about there's no game plan to beat Israel Adesanya. I have a game plan. It's just incredibly difficult to actually, do it. Right. And that game plan is you have to take him out of his rhythm, and you have to do that by timing his shots, countering his shots, counter the counters, right? Bite on the feints, because Jan was biting on the feints hard. But he knew that he was going to bite on the feints. He accepted that. And when the shots came, he made sure he had something in response, right? Rather than doing a Paulo Costa and waiting for the feints to stop to allow him to play, right? Paulo Costa thought it was a game of chess. Izzy moves, Paulo moves. Izzy moves, Paulo moves. Whereas Izzy was like, no, you don't have any pieces. I'm just going to move, right? I think in the Jan Blachowicz fight, the other thing, let's talk about slightly about the takedown, right? Because I think it was really important, was Jan was able to lure Izzy into an understanding that this was just a kickboxing match. It was just about rhythm. And then Jan changed the rhythm entirely with that takedown. Now, everyone here is grappled, right? If you take a man that weighs 20 pounds more than you and he holds you inside control, especially if you've already done 15 minutes of work, it's not a nice feeling if somebody then says, get up, right? So Jan waiting, I thought was fantastic game planning, fantastic fight IQ. I don't think Vettori will do the same thing, as everyone's already mentioned. I don't feel like, although Marvin Vettori does have pretty good head movement and pretty good boxing defenses, it's not going to be enough, because the legs will get worked if the head is moving, right? So, Robbie, what were you going to say?
Well, I mean, the only thing I think I would disagree with slightly is that I think that first fight was a lot closer than people give Vettori credit for. I don't think he got dominated in the striking. I think that was Izzy's, well, obviously bar Blachowicz, might have been the closest fight he's had in the UFC.
Kelvin Gastelum.
Gastelum is the one contending for that. But, I think Vettori did pretty well in that. I think the thing is that Israel has obviously developed a lot more since that fight than Vettori has. And so I think they were very close in that fight. I think this will really be a marker of how much each of them has developed in the meantime.
For sure. I'll offer two things. My first thing is all of the great champions are ultra confident, right? Unshakable confidence. We think about Anderson Silva, we think about GSP, we think about Conor, right? Unshakable confidence. Ronda Rousey back in the day. I wonder, firstly, what is his confidence like, knowing that he's just took a loss? Now, to me, the Jan Blachowicz fight was actually close enough, right? They weren't blowout rounds by any stretch of the imagination, right? Other than maybe the fourth, because of obvious reasons.
If I could just pipe up there and say, I thought what you were thinking there about Izzy's mentality coming into this fight, but he's a guy who has been knocked dead in kickboxing before, like flatlined, and he still had the mental fortitude to pick himself back up, move to a different sport, and get to the top of that sport, and become a champion in that sport. And I think that plays a bit of testament to his mentality.
I completely agree. The only thing I was going to add to the mentality thing was he just lost one of his closest training partners. Right? Obviously, City Kickboxing suffered a death very recently. A very, very tragic situation. That has to be tough. It's less than a week ago, right? And now we're rolling into, inside 2 weeks, not just having to block out or deal with that situation, but also cut weight, get yourself into a situation where you're able to perform at the highest level after coming off the loss. So my point wasn't just about him losing, because as you say, we've all seen the video of him getting KO'd by Cosmo Alexandra, but it's more everything else that surrounds it, right?
I think fighters at the top of their game have a real good ability to block that kind of stuff out. It's part of, they say it's 80% mental and 20% physical, and like it's pretty true. Like, you have to get yourself mentally prepared before you put your body through some physical work. So, we're not going to find out the answer to that question until Saturday night. But if I had a gun to my head and I was asked to choose what Izzy we're going to see, I think I think fighters have the ability to turn certain emotions into something like, a negative emotion into a positive, where he'll be able to, he'll be frustrated, he'll be sad, he'll be upset, but he'll be able to turn those emotions into something positive and bring it into the cage on Saturday night. And Vettori might be on the receiving end of something very bad after that. Like it's a fair point that you made. And like I said, we're not going to find out truly until Saturday night, but I wouldn't be too worried going in, and it wouldn't be a big sticking point for me before this fight.
I have to agree. I mean, Adesanya struck me as one of those guys who is particularly mentally, not just tough, but kind of mentally savvy. I think firstly about the Blachowicz fight, like I think he's intelligent enough to know that a lot of it was to do with the weight, and that it's just kind of back to the drawing board sort of thing with that. And Vettori is not going to pose the same challenges. I don't think that's going to rattle his confidence. And I mean, he's tough enough that I imagine the death, tragic as it is, probably isn't going to affect his game all that much.
All right, well, let's move to picks. Ian, who have you got and how?
I think Vettori's only saving grace in this fight might be his chin. Strangely enough, it's not a great thing that you can say about a fighter, but he took some heavy shots in that first fight. And if he has the ability to keep taking those shots in a 5-round fight, I'd fancy Israel definitely to win a decision here. But if it all depends what his game plan is, whether he wants to attack the body and the legs as well of Vettori. I think if he cuts down that leg, we could see Vettori in big trouble. And once you start hurting a fighter's legs, they'll start thinking about that, which will open up more shots to the head. So I will go I think I'll go Israel Adesanya, KO, TKO in round 4.
Agent Romanov.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see this going the distance. I think Izzy's too good. He's going to have a brilliant game plan for it. I don't think his recent experiences are going to have rattled him. Yeah, he's gonna finish Vettori. I'd say the same. Probably, knockout 4th or 5th round. It might take a while, but he'll get it done by the end.
Hawkeye.
I think Izzy in 3. He'll finish Vettori. I think what he wants to do is put a statement finish on Vettori to say, I know I lost the Black Yan fight. I know he was bigger than me. The excuses are there. That's fine. But don't forget, I am the best at middleweight. And I think that's what he wants to do.
So I feel like you and I have very similar thoughts on a lot of MMA, but specifically this league. And I'm calling Izzy inside 3 by submission.
Oh.
And the reason why I say that is because
to make a point.
He's talked, to make a point, absolutely, but he talked after the Kelvin Gastelum fight that he really wanted to submit him, right? And was really upset that he didn't submit him. He went then and trained, not immediately after, but before the Yan fight, he spent time in San Diego with Atos and Andre Galvao. He was given a purple belt, and he said that he felt his jiu-jitsu game had leveled up significantly, which you'd expect for spending a month with Andre Galvao training with him every day, right? And he wanted to submit Jan Blachowicz, right? Now that didn't happen either. But we've talked often about, the way to beat Izzy is to change his rhythm and whatever. Well, I wonder if we see something similar, right? I wonder if we see him beat the legs, beat the body, beat the head, and then either a sloppy takedown attempt, Izzy reverses it and we get something, or maybe we see Izzy shoot. I doubt it, but maybe we see, even a tie clinch sweep or something similar, right? I think your point is absolutely right that he wants a statement win here. Doesn't need one, but wants a statement win here. And what better statement win than to catch your first submission?
You'll get good odds on that. You put some money on it, you'll get good odds on that.
Yeah, so I'd say Izzy submission inside 3.
Fair.
We'll move on to Jesus Christ, what a fucking fight this was the first time. Deiveson Figueredo versus Brandon Moreno. Holy fuck. Go on, Ian. Do me the honors. What do you think?
I think that we're going to see a much more dominant performance here from the Deiveson Figueredo. I think one big point that stands out from their first fight is the fact that basically Figueredo, camp for the first fight was basically cutting weight. He had defended his title 21 days previously, and got matched up again like 3 weeks after that fight, and he had no time to prepare, no time to game plan. Basically all he was doing was keeping his weight down, making sure that he made weight for this fight. And I thought it was a very peculiar decision for the UFC to do that, because they have worked really hard to get this flyweight division back up and going again. And to make a champion fight 2 fights in 6 weeks, I think was a little bit ridiculous. And to be honest, they're very lucky that he didn't lose his title. But it was always going to be a win-win for the UFC anyway, because if Moreno did get the win, they would have done the rematch anyway. But I think that Figueredo is going to come in here and probably take out Brandon Moreno inside 3 rounds. I'm terrible for giving predictions ahead of time on this, but I always do it. I'm sorry, but yeah, I think he's just going to be a little bit too much. I think Deiveson Figueredo is a fantastically well-rounded fighter. He's dangerous. He's mean. He loves hurting people, and we saw that in the Benavidez fights. And I think we're going to see a fully charged Figueredo come in here and do some good work against Brandon Moreno. Now, not to discredit Moreno all that much, who is also a great fighter and has been on a great run and definitely deserved to get the rematch here. And with that, I would have scored the first fight for Figueredo, but I wasn't too angry about the draw. I thought overall it was a fair. I scored it for Figueredo, but I accept the draw there. But this fight, I don't think we're going to have to go to the judges.
Agent Romanov.
We chatted about this just before the podcast, and I think we agree 100% with Ian. Like, it was just such a bizarre thing that he had that fight 3 weeks before and then carried on with it. And fair play to him. And actually, he made one of the best fights, just one of the best fights ever. Like, I watched it on the train here, and it was brilliant. And actually, in hindsight, a lot of the reason for that draw was the groin shot where he got a point taken. If not for that, it would have been hands down Figueredo. And even then, one of the judges did score it for Figueredo. I think with a camp and an actual game plan and everything else, I think Figueredo is going to smash him within a few rounds.
Figueredo really struggles to make 125. And it's been a real effort for him to make 125. To jump in back-to-back fights and keep your weight down for that long, the diminished performance is purely because he was so drawn out because he was keeping his weight down. I think you got Brandon Moreno at the best of his best and Figueredo at probably some of his worst. And again, not to discredit Moreno, all I think is going to happen this time is you're going to see a really active Figueredo rip Moreno apart because he's now in the shape he needs to be for a title fight at 125.
Basically, I agree with all of you, Graham. I think, look, the thing that may prolong this is Moreno's chin, right? He's Mexican born. He literally has Mexican blood running through his entire body, right? And we see that on fight night. He is a man that doesn't seem to have any quit in him, right? And is always up for a firefight. The problem that you guys have already articulated so well is a full camp Deiveson Figueredo is not the kind of guy you want to get into a firefight with, right? I think the best example of this really is Alex Perez, right? Deiveson Figueredo is so good at mixing things up, so good at having a multifaceted attack structure that when you feel like something is going one way, it's actually going the other. And he's lethal from anywhere, and Moreno isn't lethal from everywhere. Right. So I feel like I agree with everyone that it's probably going to be a stoppage for Deiveson Figueredo. Right. When that's hard for me to call because Moreno is so tough to break down. Right. It may have to be a submission. Right. It may have to be a rear naked or something similar. But yeah, I definitely see a Figueredo stoppage. Robbie and Lee.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be the first round. Moreno's too tough for that. Second or third, I think he'll knock him out. I think that there was some huge shots last time, and I think that if Figueredo is able to follow up on those shots a bit better, he'll at least TKO him.
I think he's going to end early. I think first round Figueredo.
All right, so you hate Brandon Moreno, I understand.
Yeah, apparently so. No, I think this is going to be early. I think we're going to see a completely different Figueredo. I think he's going to come out like a bat out of hell, really go for him, and then I think it is going to be a submission on the back of a good strike that's caught him. Again, the toughness does play a part in it, but I think I rewatched the Benavidez fight, and he's lethal on the ground. He's so quick at transitioning through submissions. He is just lethal. I can see him coming out strong, catching him, and then throwing a submission somewhere.
I agree. I think that's a really, really valid pick. And talking about submissions, we'll move on to Nate Diaz. And Ian, do you want to talk us through slightly that fight? Give us your initial thoughts.
It's really good fight. I like the fact that Nate Diaz is coming back and he's fighting a guy in the upper echelon of the division. It shows the confidence that he's showing in himself, and I believe that Team Diaz didn't take this fight for any other reason other than they think that they can win here. Me, on the other hand, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him coming in against a guy like Leon Edwards. I would worry about the scar tissue around the eyes of Nate Diaz, and I think it's played a major factor in his last fight against Masvidal, and we're going to see blood in this fight. It's guaranteed. You don't see Nate Diaz walking in there walking out of the cage without cutting his face, very rarely. And I believe the method to open up Diaz's face is getting clinching. And when you're breaking from the clinch, Leon Edwards has excellent elbows off the clinch. And I think that that's going to be a major game plan for the Edwards team going in here. And you are going to be getting caught up in clinch games and grappling games with Diaz. That will go without saying. Who will instigate that? That's yet to be seen. If I'm Nate Diaz in this fight, I would fancy myself being the better, just pure boxer. So does he use those boxing skills to kind of try and jab Leon up and not let him get away with it? But that's like that. I'm just saying that's one way that you could do it, but that's easier said than done. Nate Diaz's leg is going to be there for the taking as well. We talked about blueprints on beating fighters, and I think the blueprint has been printed time and time again on how to beat Nate Diaz. And I believe that Leon Edwards has the skills and has the tenacity to get it done in this fight for sure.
Robbie Romanov.
Yeah, I think Nate Diaz has taken that role of decent fighter who will distinguish those people who can game plan and who can't game plan. And I think we're probably all in agreement that Leon Edwards can game plan probably very well. When fighters get to that upper level and they know how to change their fighting style to beat certain people, I think Nate Diaz becomes very beatable. Whether it's leg kicks or whether it's scar tissue, it's just going to be one of those. I mean, maybe Nate Diaz has better jiu-jitsu or something, but he's never been a takedown guy, and I just don't think he's going to get Leon Edwards on the ground. I mean, to be honest, I kind of get why Leon Edwards would have taken it when he's this close to the title shot, because Nate Diaz might be confident coming in, but I think Leon Edwards is going to be almost certain that he's going to win this fight.
I agree with essentially everything, and I think the two. My overarching thoughts, the only differences that I have between you guys is we haven't seen, and this is me, I'm digging deep here, right? But we haven't seen somebody fight Leon with the length that Nate Diaz has, right? We haven't seen somebody with the range. Leon is always generally the guy with the range and able to dictate the range. Now, we do know that Nate stands with quite a wide stance. Ask Conor McGregor. He might have something to tell you about that. But, it's, as I said, I'm clutching at straws here, right? Like, I feel like it's very rare that we see pure generalists at the top of MMA, right? There's a new breed coming, and we've talked about that on other podcasts. And the new breed is entirely a generalist, right? MMA is its own thing. They are skilled in MMA. They aren't skilled in, there's no weighting towards a specific skill set. Whereas even to this day, generally, even if you look at a Valentina Shevchenko or whatever, who's another really, really good all-round fighter, Piotr Jan or Deiveson Figueredo, right? They still have their specialties, right? Leon doesn't seem to have that, right? Excellent clinch game, excellent anti-jiu-jitsu game, excellent anti-wrestling game, and a pretty good kickboxing game too, right? A pretty good stand-up game. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens and how this fight plays out, right? Does Leon attempt to make a statement win here? We know that Leon's not the biggest risk taker, right? But does he try and take Nate Diaz down? Does he try and dominate him on the ground? We know that Nate's happy to go to the ground. Does he try and utilize the scar tissue as a method to finish this fight? I don't know. But I do feel like this is almost certainly Leon's fight to lose. However, if Diaz goes in and wins, title shot. That's what's happening here.
So this was the approach I was going to come at the discussion for this. I think I agree with everything you said around the fight, and I'm not going to give any more on that. But if you look at how the fight's been set up, if you're the UFC, Leon Edwards, the argument is people don't care about him and nobody wants to watch him. So here's Nate Diaz, that if you win, you've got that Conor McGregor rub, you've got that Diaz rub. There's people going to be buying the pay-per-view to watch Nate Diaz come back because he's this idolized figure of MMA. You give Leon Edwards that rub. They tried to do it with Tyron Woodley last year in England when he was fighting in England. They've tried to give him clout off people to build his brand and fandom. This is the best opportunity for him to get that. But it's win-win for the UFC. Because if Leon loses, well, nobody cares about him anyway. And you've got Nate Diaz now, who you can throw straight in a title shot. You can sell 1 million pay-per-views and cash in and go, great. We didn't really care about the result. We're just going to make money either way. And I think it's just smart business decisions from the UFC, which works. They're a good business at times.
Can I offer this as potentially UFC's very fringe, very vague plan, right? We do Nate Diaz, Leon Edwards. Nate Diaz wins, right? Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. McGregor wins. McGregor fights Charlie Olives, gets the win, wins the 155-pound belt, right? If Diaz wins against...
no way in hell he beats Usman.
No, obviously not. Could you imagine? He jumps the gilly and finishes
Not
it. That would be
chance.
fantastic. But if he beats Edwards, do we see Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor 3 for the 155-pound title?
Probably, but I hate it.
I think that there's too many hurdles in the way to even talk about Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor 3 as a title fight. I think there's more of a chance of us seeing the fight, whether it's a title fight or not. I'd say the likely outcome would be when they do fight, it's not going to be for a title.
All right,
I think you could be looking at an outcome where Diaz gets beaten by Edwards here, and you could be looking at an outcome where Poirier goes in and takes out McGregor. Those two results will also give you Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor 3 as well. So where it's kind of a win-win situation for Nate Diaz as well. He's taken this gamble going in against somebody like Leon Edwards. I was baffled with why he would take that fight, but look, he's gambling on himself, and sometimes you have to do that. And kudos to him for doing that too. But he knows he has that McGregor fight in his back pocket as well. And this is a win-win situation, or a lose-lose situation, whatever you want to call it. You know, I think more likely outcome is Nate Diaz loses this fight, and we will probably see McGregor and Diaz 3 down the line. I don't know whether it be at 170 or 155 or whatever they want to do, but I would very doubt that we'd see them fight for a title. That's what the UFC would want. That's what they would like to sell. But yeah, there's too many obstacles in the way right now to even fathom that conversation, I think.
One thing I will say before we move on, right, is if Nate loses, right, can we see, just for fun, Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson?
Yeah, at 170.
But you're
At 170.
Yeah, 170. I think you're going to struggle to get Diaz to go back down to 155.
Yeah, that's fine. Who gives a fuck? Just let Tony...
170, yeah, I'd be
Let's have some fucking fun, guys.
Let's have some fucking fun.
I'd enjoy the
up.
press conference. Just those two beat
Mate.
batshit around each other would be quite fun.
Brilliant. Right, let's move on to a fight that is pretty sad to me, actually. Robbie. I mean, let's be honest, we've given our picks. Come on.
All right, yes, let's move on.
I was going to go for a draw.
I was going to go with fights cancelled because Leon Edwards can't catch a fucking break.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, could you imagine? I think I might cry. Damian Maia, Belal Muhammad, Robbie.
Oh, thank you for giving me this one. I just love it. I mean, Damian Maia, I mean, yes, he is over the hill in his fighting career, but my God, what a legend. And I just love the fact that, you know, this fight aside, I love the fact that he was doing pretty well, but then for when all of the advice on you've got to be a balanced fighter and just went, I'm just doing jiu-jitsu, and then did amazing and had his brilliant run. And, you know, I'm sad that that's over, but I loved it while it happened, like backtake extraordinaire. You know, the thing is, Maia, he is he's on a couple losing. He's
Single losing streak.
Oh, is it just one?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Either way, he's clearly not quite the man he was. It wasn't so long ago we were talking about Woodley, Maia, and Wonder Boy battling it out at the top of the division, and you know where that's gone. Maia legend. Obviously, his game plan is get to your back and choke you out. It's not a very subtle game plan, but it's really worked well for him in the past, and I expect he's not going to shake it up. Belal Muhammad, on the other hand, probably one of the most underrated guys in the division. That said,
Not by me.
Not by you, Harry, but by the world. That said, maybe that's starting to change actually. But most of the knock on Belal Muhammad has been his lack of finishing ability, and he's not finished many fights. But he is tough, and a couple of his past fights have been really brilliant pressure striking fights, and that's where his strengths have really been. Actually, it's not been so much grappling in his past 3, to be honest. He's really gone for the striking route, and that would be the smart game plan here. Why shake that up? Maia is over the hill, but he's still brilliant grappler. Don't risk it. I mean, just pressure him and strike him. The one thing he's going to have to watch out for is maybe the fear of one of Maia's strange single legs that isn't quite.
It's called the broomstick. Yeah,
it's called a broomstick.
Yeah, it's a broomstick takedown. The one that he uses, the single leg.
Ah, well, you learn something new every day. That's not something.
Shout out Sean McGuinness.
Maybe the worry about pressuring in too hard and getting taken down with a single leg might make Muhammad pull back a bit, but I doubt it. I think he's still going to fight with pressure. I think he's still going to be pushing Maia towards the edge of the cage. And yeah, I mean, it's a great fight. If it goes to the ground, it'll be a brilliant back and forth action. And I like that Maia's still there, but I can't see this fight going any other way than Muhammad taking it.
Yeah, I'm going to try and sum this up really quickly, and that's that Maia's 43 and has no footwork.
Oh, come on. I tried to hype that one so bad.
Look, I mean, to be honest, this is UFC 101, right? You give the guy that they're putting a little bit of marketing dollars behind, you give him the legend, right? And you give it to him in a fashion that the probability of him winning is pretty high, right? Okay, we saw the level against Leon Edwards, right? We saw that Muhammad was quite a few levels underneath Leon, right, in terms of striking and whatever. And obviously the eye poke was terrible, and yeah, nobody wants to see a fight end like that. However, Belal Muhammad has fantastic footwork, fantastic pressure footwork. His boxing is really good. His level changing is really good in terms of striking. Maia doesn't understand anything that I've just said, right? A fantastic fighter if he can get you against the fence and if he can get a hold of you, right? Now, don't get me wrong. The takedown is a threat, right? And if, for whatever reason, Muhammad ends up in the ground in some form of half control that Maia has over him, we're going to see some interesting stuff, right? But I feel like Muhammad has a ton of explosion, a lot of heart, and can scramble for days. In a half control situation, I would favor the younger man over the 43-year-old fighter that's taken a lot of damage in his last fight. That's not to say that Demian Maia can't finish this fight, can't out-grapple Muhammad. I'm sure he can if Muhammad allows it, right? But this is essentially where we are. And Belal's my boy. If anyone that's listened to this podcast, Belal is my boy, right? But I feel like Belal is too intelligent and Damian doesn't know how to fight going backwards. And that's what's going to happen in this fight, in my opinion.
The UFC have sorted him out. It's you stepped up for Leon Edwards.
Yeah.
You took a big risk. It's the old adage of I'll fight anytime, anywhere. Dana White loves that shit.
Of course he does. Here's your reward.
So he sorts you out if you do that. You've saved him loads of money and whatever. So he sorted him out. It's sad because we're probably going to see old man Maia get beaten up.
Yeah.
He's a legend of the sport, but Belal's been given one here. Stick him back on track, get a nice win, get a couple of highlights for his reel, on to the next one.
Yeah. And, you know, Maia's openly said that this is his retirement fight. Sorry, go on.
Oh, has he said? I didn't realize he said that, because I was going to throw a spanner in the works there and just say I reckon Maia might get the submission and retire in cage afterwards, but he's already planning on doing that. But
Yeah.
I think what you guys said about Belal's game plan, it needs to be putting Damian Maia on the back foot in this fight for sure. And if he can do that, he definitely can get the win. Now, with Maia's last, like, the people who have beaten Maia in his recent fights have all been top level guys. He's lost to Woodley, Covington, Usman, and he lost to Gilbert Burns in his last fight. You know, so they're all high level fighters. And I don't think Belal Muhammad is at that level, but I think Maia's biggest fight is with Father Time right now. He's 43 years of age. He has taken a lot of damage. And if Belal Muhammad can get him in there early and put him on the back foot and land those big, heavy shots, we're going to find out how much really Damian Maia really wants to still be in there. Just to cause a bit of trouble, I'll go with my original prediction and say Damian Maia by submission, and he'll retire gracefully, which very rarely happens in the fight game.
I mean, look, I'd love to see it if it wasn't against my boy.
Yeah.
But I think, to your point, like, you're absolutely right. You know, Ben Askren got wrecked, right? But in that fight, like, we saw them stand for a little while. That's all I needed to see.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh, I know what'll happen. Maia to lose, retire, and then fight Jake Paul next.
oh, you took my fucking word. Like, when we were going to move to picks, I was going to be like, my prediction is Damian Maia, can't wait to see him fight Jake Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
the UFC retirement plan.
it is the UFC retirement plan, right? It is.
It's Bellator, but now.
Oh God, no! I don't want to see him at Bellator. Fuck me, that
Damian
Maia versus Douglas Lima. Nah, I'm all right.
Yeah, I can do without that.
Bellator loves an old man fight.
They do. Yeah, let's not do that. Anyway, let's move to picks. As always, Ian has prematurely given his. Lee, what have you got?
I am going to go Belal by decision. I think there'll be hairy moments. I think he'll look impressive, but I think Maia will just tough it out and stay in there.
Robbie?
I think Belal by decision. I think Damian Maia will be docked a ton of points because Belal's eyes are absolute finger magnets and he gets poked at every single fight. That's my serious prediction.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's every single fight. I didn't realize how much it was, and
it's so
watched
true.
you before this, and it's not just the last one; it's all
of them.
Of the last four. It's
really my goodness.
Yeah. He's very unfortunate with that stuff, but yeah, I mean, I think my boy will win. I can't see him finishing Maia. I don't see him subbing Maia any day of this world. And one thing that we do know about Maia is, unless it's big hands like Gilbert Burns, he's very durable, right? And he always finds a way to stay in there with his grappling. So I would expect him to last the course, and I hope he lasts the course. But yeah, I think Belal by decision. Right, we will move on to Jesus Christ. We talk about this man being put through the fucking ringer. Lee, do you want us to give us a quick breakdown on Paul Craig versus Jamahall Hill?
Yeah, so I need to prefix this with I am a big Paul Craig fan. I just think he's hilarious. I have so much time for him. So this is going to be so skewed to Paul Craig winning, which I don't think he will do, but I have to pick him because he's my boy. Jamahall Hill is big, strong, athletic, technically lacking a lot of skill. The OSP fight, I rewatched it, and a few of the punches were kind of from the hip and jumping whilst throwing. I think if you put a real technical striker in there with him, he'd get shown up. That isn't Paul Craig. Paul Craig is a grinder and is good at just being there. I didn't realize his last fight was the Shogun fight, so he's had quite a bit of time off, which it does show, and ring rust is a thing as much as Dominic Cruz says it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to try and steer some actual intelligence into this now. What I will just point out, right? Paul Craig coming off an undefeated run, right? Just before he came to the UFC, he beat Irish standout Carl Moore, who in his own right is a brilliant fighter, right? Has so much potential. You then go in against Henrique da Silva. Okay, fine. The fights after that, Tyson Pedro, Khalil Roundtree Jr., Magomed Ankalaev, for fuck's sake, Jimmy Crew, Kennedy Nzechukwu, Alonzo Menafield, Vinicius Mora, whoever that guy is, Mauricio Shogun fucking Hua. You then go into Antigulov, then Mauricio Shogun Hua again. Jesus Christ, has Paul Craig been given an absolute murderer's row at light heavyweight in a division that's literally as shallow as my bathtub, right? They've managed to find every murderer possible and be like, Paul Craig, mate, here's your fight. Congratulations. Why do we hate Paul Craig so much? Why? But I mean, look, I feel like Jamahall Hill has the makings of the next contender at light heavyweight, right? As I've just said, a very, very shallow division, right? And Over St. Peru doesn't get knocked out too often, right? So, okay, we'll talk about technical ability and all that stuff, but to finish Over St. Peru in the fashion he did was impressive, right? I think, as you say, he has lots of time. How old is he? He's young, right? Okay, he's 30. Fucking hell, he's not that young. But as we know it, the heavier guys, they can go a little bit longer than the lighter guys. But if you can add a little bit of refinement, a bit of chiseling, a bit of sandpaper, you've got a fun fighter, right? You've got a guy that looks the part and gets finishes. In a light heavyweight division, that's going to get you really, really far. So I'm excited for this fight. I'm going to take the sensible pick, and that's Paul Craig by submission at round 3, 4 minutes and 59 seconds, right? Obviously, that's the sensible pick. But does anyone else have any other thoughts on this?
So I want to pick Paul Craig, but I just can't. I think Jamahall Hill will have a bit too much kind of power. I don't think Craig will be able to get the respect from him early. I think the submission is the approach he needs to take, because I don't think striking with him is going to work. But I don't see him taking him down. So I think Jamahall Hill by decision.
I mean, my only thing to disagree with that is we saw Paul Craig in the first fight against Hua look, okay in his grappling, as you'd expect, right?
Against the ghost of Shogun Rua.
How dare you?
Yeah.
And then in the second fight, I mean, okay, look, Shogun Hua might as well have been Ben Askren in his Jake Paul fight, right? But he went in there and he looked like an all right striker, right? He looked like he actually had some understanding of what a combination was, what a jab was, what some forward pressure was. So I definitely wouldn't rule out Paul Craig in this fight, but you know why this fight has been made. This fight has been made for Jamahall Hill to go in there and beat a guy that's beaten Shogun Hua. You know what I mean? Like that's what it feels like to me. Ian, do you disagree?
I do not at all. I think that, we spoke about in previous podcasts about UFC matchmaking and even in this fight, Paul Craig being thrown to the wolves and being run through the mill. But this fight is basically set up for Jamahall Hill to go in there, get an impressive victory, move on up into the rankings, and get himself matched up with probably a top 5 guy next. I wouldn't be right. I would tend to agree with Harry too. I think that he does have a good high ceiling, and he's not reached that ceiling yet as a fighter. And this is the perfect fight for him to go out and make a statement. And I think he'll do that. I think he might. I think he has the ability to take Paul Craig out for sure.
All right, Robbie, pick, please.
Yeah, I have to assume that the UFC hates Paul Craig because he's got 2 first names, and therefore
that is a very, very valid point.
He's going to be given a match that he can't.
The best point of this podcast.
100%. 100%. I mean, look, Jack Sear used to say it. You can't trust a man with 2 first names. So there you go. There you go. Lee, pick, please.
I've already done mine.
He's already done his.
All right. Well, I want to hear it again formally.
Formally, I'm going to go Jamahall Hill by decision.
All right. Perfect. Right. We'll run through the prelims and then the undercard. Drew Dober versus Brad Riddell is an absolute banger. I'm super excited for that. Drew Dober, I mean, look, Islam Makhachev, these things unfortunately happen, right? But I feel like Drew Dober and Brad Riddell have similar styles, right? Both good scrambly fighters, unless you're fighting Makhachev. Both decent on the feet, both tough, both come to fight. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. I think it's going to be a really, really good back and forth fight. Does anyone have any specific thoughts on that fight?
No, it's just going to be a firefight. Has potential to be fight of the night if it
100%.
like these two guys are just going to come forward and start throwing big heavy shots, and it'll be a test of each of their fight wills, so it is to see who gets the win. Like they're going to be both looking to go in there and get the knockout, and that's going to make for an exciting fight.
It's the right decision to put it as the free prelim ender. It's going to get you hyped up. You're going to be like, I want to pay for the pay-per-view now, because it's the right business fight to put in that spot.
100%. Robbie?
I've got nothing to add, to be honest.
Fantastic. We'll move on then. Eryk Anders versus Darren Stewart is another money fight if you want people to buy the pay-per-view, right? Another two guys that come forward. Me and Ian were talking about this just off air earlier. It was a fantastic fight before the no contest. I could see it being just a run of the same, to be honest. Darren Stewart isn't often in boring fights, you know what I mean? And Eryk Anders is a man that is happy to be dragged into a war. So that's what I can see happening here. Again, anyone else have any different views?
Yeah, I think that's going to be massively entertaining. Both fighters were hurt in the first fight before it ended, and Eryk Anders was on his way probably to picking up a TKO victory if he didn't throw that legal knee. So it'll be up to Darren Stewart to kind of change it up a little bit. Maybe he won't be as engaging, but it'll be up to Anders to take the fight to him again. Really exciting fight as well, and I'm looking forward to see how it plays out.
I think this is a good fight to see where Darren Stewart's at. Can he make an adjustment? Can he learn from the mistakes of the past? Or is he just one trick pony, stick to it? I think if he can change his game plan and kind of adjust and win, I think his ceiling is then a lot higher.
I agree. I mean, I think Eryk Anders now is definitely a lower level litmus test for guys, right? Like we're not going to see Eryk Anders versus a top 5 guy anytime soon. However, he's a good fighter, tough fighter, got a lot of power, and is more than able to put you away, if you present that opportunity. So we'll move into Lauren Murphy and Joanne Calderwood. I mean, this is your number one contender fight at a flyweight, right? Like that's what it feels like. Lauren Murphy has been championing for a title shot since her last fight. Joanne Calderwood obviously had some slip-ups, but looked all right in her last fight. I feel like the winner of this probably is the next title challenger.
Yeah, the winner of this fight gets the reward of being bludgeoned by Valentina Shevchenko in their next fight. So,
I mean, that's just it, isn't it? Like, as soon as you can string together, it's one of those divisions, and they always happen from time to time where you get the champion who's that dominant. As soon as you string together a few wins,
you're next up. What's Laura Murphy on? Like a 4-fight winning streak now?
Something like that. Yeah, I can just pull that up 1 second.
Although
4-fight winning streak. Yeah.
Jojo actually, she hasn't strung together more than 2 wins since she's been in the UFC. So
that's not true.
Is that not true?
No. She fought and beat Kalindra Fowler, and then she beat Ariane Litsky before she dropped 8. And she fought and beat Valerie Letourneau and Courtney Casey back to back.
Yes, more than 2.
Yeah. Oh, more than 2. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm just a shithouse.
You really saw the chance to be like, Robbie's fucking wrong, I'm gonna go for it.
He went straight for the neck there. So
I did. Yeah, sorry, I blew my load.
So she shouldn't really in other divisions she probably wouldn't be that close to a title shot, but with the division where it's at, with Shevchenko where it's at, yeah, it could be. It's going to be a very boxing versus Muay Thai fight. I think it'll be a good striking match.
I think Lauren Murphy takes her down and controls her, to be honest.
You think?
Yeah. Jojo Calderwood, we know, I mean, we talk about blueprints and ways to beat people, right? Jojo Calderwood, for the longest time, everyone thought she had this fantastic ceiling because she looks so good when she's able to fight the way she wants to fight, right? She looks so good. But the takedown defense just isn't there, right? And when she does get taken down, instead of looking to get back up and engage back in a fight that she's happy to compete in, she tries to sweep people and hit arm bars from guard and these sorts of things. And we know that modern MMA, those things are way, way, way lower percentage than they used to be. So I feel this is Lauren Murphy's fight to lose. However, I really like Jojo Calderwood as a person, as a fighter. I think she's a lot of fun. But yeah, I feel like this is Murphy's fight to lose. Ian?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that what you said, the difference will be the takedown factor that Murphy can produce in this fight. And I think that she'll try and stand and bang with her, but like she'll always have that takedown in her back pocket if things aren't going her way. And that will probably be the biggest factor in this fight. If she chooses to level change and switch things up on the feet, she can get Jojo guessing a little bit, which might take away a little bit from Jojo's game. If Murphy goes in there and thinks that she can outstrike Jojo for 3 rounds, then she might get into a little bit of trouble. I think. I think what you said, Harry, is the key in this fight, and that would be the takedown for Murphy.
Mm-hmm. Right, we'll move on to. I mean, this is another fantastic fight. Movsar Evloev versus Hakeem Dawodu is a fantastic fight. Mm-hmm. To me, Movsar Evloev has the makings of being right up there at featherweight, right up there. We saw Nick Lentz try and jump the gilly maybe 1,000 times in their last fight, and Movsar dealt so well with that. Hakeem Dawodu is obviously a fantastic striker, really good counter puncher, counter striker. This just has striker versus grappler with a bit of striking written all over it, right? And to me, this is a really, really interesting fight because again, it will show us the trajectories of both of these guys' careers. Obviously, Danny Henry submitted Hakeem Dawodu in fantastic fashion very early in his UFC tenure, but since then, Hakeem's looked pretty good, got some notable wins. Movsar Evloev hasn't lost since he's come in the UFC. And yeah, I think this is like your traditional UFC matchmaking of here's 2 prospects. You've been in the UFC a little while now. Let's see who's going to cut the mustard, right?
It's exactly that. You've both got good win streaks. You've both had good performances. Now's the time to see who's getting the push up. Mm-hmm. Who's going to move into top 15 territory and start fighting people with a number before the name, rather than kind of linger around the prelims and kind of fight lower level fighters. I think it is a big grappler versus striker fight. It's a good test for both of them, but it's who's going to get the push up, who's the one to kind of take the leap.
I agree. So that rounds out our prelims. Early prelims, we have Pani Kianza versus Alexis Davis, Frank Camacho, Matt Frivola, Chase Hooper, Stephen Peterson, Faras Ziam versus Luigi Vandramini, and then Carlos Felipe versus Jake Collier. For me, the only fights really to talk about are Frank Camacho and Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper fighting some guy they found on the street, and Frank Camacho versus Matt Frivola for the absolute violence weight title.
So there will be blood. There will be blood in that fight.
The Chase Hooper fight, I want to just say first, this is a perfect fight for Robbie because he can write his article about a great submission.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
I feel like this has become a bit of a thing. I'm not sure why it's become such a thing, and I really wish I'd never mentioned it. I've stopped writing those articles because it's just become too hard here and there to find decent grappling fights in these cards. Maybe this will be the one. Maybe it's coming back. Son of Ben Askren. Come on, do me proud.
I can't see it. I mean, look, any fighter, and this is no disrespect to Stephen Peterson whatsoever, but to lose to Alex Caceres over 3 rounds, to lose to Luis Pena. I mean, Luis Pena's a good fighter, right? But Brandon Davis, the same. He's not beaten anyone with a notable name in the UFC. I feel like this is the right step back for Chase Hooper, right? You know, there's a lot of promotional dollars that have been put into him, and you don't want to waste those dollars. So I think it's the right move. Whether Chase Hooper learns how to strike ever will be, you know, either the make or break for him, right? Obviously, his top game is absolutely fantastic. His pressure top game is brilliant. And clearly, he can shoot a Hail Mary, he'll hook at people as well. But yeah, I mean, if he doesn't learn to strike, and he doesn't learn to defend from strikes, it's going to be a very short UFC tenure, and we're going to find out more about that.
We're
in this fight.
15 years away from him finishing his MMA career and then fighting the next YouTube boxer.
There you go.
Jake Paul's son.
Jake Paul's son. Yes. But no, I think that I'm not mad at this matchup for Chase Hooper. It's he got put in there against Bruce Leroy, and that was a fight to see where he was at in his MMA game, and he failed massively on the feet. He has a lot of work to do there. And we're going to get a chance. He got a win in his last fight, and this is another perfect fight for him to go in there and showcase his abilities. You're not throwing him in there with a killer guy, someone's going to do some serious damage to him, because it's pretty clear that he's not at the level where he's striking yet. While he will improve each fight, it's going to take him some time. Like you say, he's very young in his career, and he has lots of time to develop. And I just don't want to see fighters like Chase Hooper getting pushed on up the rankings and taking bad beatings that will affect his overall career. Fighters going in there and getting bad beatings early in their career is just not good. You need to, I like to see fighters getting slowly built, and that's what the UFC are doing with Chase Hooper in this fight. It's a very winnable fight for him, and we'll see what he's like on the feet.
I mean, I would like to see Chase Hooper do something Ryan Hall-esque, where he just learns a bizarre striking style that works perfectly with his game. It's actually going to be the most efficient thing for him to do, because to learn your basic kickboxing or Muay Thai fighting style from the ground up is going to take years. If he learns something weird that's perfectly tailored for him, I think that'd be the best way for him to go up the rankings.
Agree.
Yeah,
I mean,
but the higher he gets up the rankings too, though, the less he'll be able to depend on his jiu-jitsu as well, as we've seen time and time again. When you get to that upper echelon, guys are more well-rounded, you're simply not going to be able to stay shooting for takedowns or pulling guard and stuff like that. So it's very important, like what you did say, Robbie, he has to integrate some level or something weird into his game to kind of make him a little bit unique, but with that striking aspect that, once he gets better, more confidence will come as well. So it'll be interesting to see how his career develops overall.
All right. Well, that rounds out our fights. Let's go for a fight of the night pick. Robbie?
I'm a massive Izzy fan. I've got to pick the main event for fight of the night, I think. I'm sorry. I know it's basic. Let me have a look. Oh,
no, it's fine. You've done it now.
Yeah, no, I'll stick with that. I'm looking at it. There are a lot of fights that I really like. And you know what? It's a great fucking card. But
it's a great card.
Yeah, I think the main event.
Robbie? I've just said Robbie. Lee?
I still think the main event.
Yeah, all right, cool.
I'm going Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz. I think there's going to be blood, there's going to be anger and just kind of chaos and toughness. People love that shit.
Ian?
Yep, I'm the same there too. I think Edwards and Diaz is going to be the fight of the night. I think the two guys, whether I could see that fight going the distance, or maybe if Diaz gets cut up quite a bit, maybe it might be stopped in the 4th or 5th round, which would still, you just get to see 4 rounds and you can still be awarded fight of the night, rather than, I would say maybe Figueredo and Moreno, but I don't think that fight might not go long enough. And I think it's going to be pretty much a one-sided beatdown as well. That's why I would not go for that fight this time around. I think Edwards and Diaz it's a good matchup, and it's going to be violent, and there will be blood, and it will be entertaining, and it'll be over and back. So that's my pick for fight of the night.
Cool. Well, I respect all of your opinions to be wrong. I respect that. It's fine.
Okay.
The fight of the night is Frank Camacho versus Matt Frivola, and that's it. I'm telling you, that is it.
Those guys, the UFC don't give bonuses to those guys.
Time you saw a fight of the night that low down in the card.
Hey, I didn't say who was going to get the bonus. I just asked who's going to be fight of the night.
Okay.
Right?
Oh.
And fight of the night is Matt Frivola versus Frank Camacho.
You know what?
Hey, we never specified the rules, fuckface.
I think that's fair enough. I think Harry's method there is okay.
I think Frank Camacho is never in a boring fight. Matt Frivola is somebody that always wants to throw hands, right? And both these guys are tough. Both of them are going to be in a war. I think
both of them are desperate need of a win as well. You know what I mean? And that's going to bring out the dog in both of them. So like, I do agree with what you're saying, that it's going to be a tremendous fight. But I also agree with Lee, is that they never really give fighters that low unless it's an absolutely sensational fight and undeniable. It's very rare that, and it's unfortunate that the lower guys down in the card just don't get looked after with bonuses.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, the other candidate I have is Drew Dober and Riddell, because I do think that is a barn burner. But the other fights, like I think Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz is actually going to be pretty one-sided. And I think Israel Adesanya and Marvin Vettori can't be fight of the night because it's also going to be pretty one-sided. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, that rounds us out, boys. We're done.
Harry, I've got one final question for you.
Go on, then.
You've given us all the Avenger titles. Who do you see yourself as?
I can be Captain Fury, I think. Captain Fury. Is that not his name? What's his fucking name?
Do you mean
Agent Fury? Whatever his fucking name is. That guy. The guy with one eye.
We'll make up a new one for you, Captain England.
Thank you. Fantastic.
He doesn't have a shield. He just runs around with a bulldog.
Exactly. Yeah, that's my special attack. I just chuck bulldogs at people. No, I mean, obviously, if I could have a choice, it would obviously be Iron Man, but I'm neither intelligent or rich, so these things happen. But yeah, Agent Fury, Nick Fury is who I'm going to be. But yes, right. Well, I mean, that's completely derailed the end of the podcast, but we will end it there. Thank you very much, both sets of Avengers teams. Thank you. We will do this again for the next pay-per-view. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Harry.
Cheers, Harry.